Hello and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday's Tips. So, yesterday I had to decide whether to take on a new client or not. I had this great opportunity, it was going to be good money, but something felt off. Didn't feel quite like the best fit for me. I knew I had to think about it more fully to make the right choice for me, because I knew that the right choice for me would ultimately be the right choice for the client. How many of you are in that place sometimes where there's a decision in front of you and you're just not positive what's off, what might not feel quite right? And you feel like you know your values, but maybe you struggle to consistently use them in your business. So, my promise to you is that in this Tuesday Tips, we're going to build a bridge between knowing your values and consistently applying them daily. Now, this is going to tie in beautifully with the new show that goes live tomorrow, the new Star Coach show, with my wonderful guest, Alma Weaver-Jones, where we're going to be talking about values and we're going to be identifying how you get clear about those values. So, this might be a Tuesday Tips that you come back again and visit again after you listen to that new episode with Alma. Not that you need to leave right now, stay with me now, but this is a great compliment to that interview with Alma. Once we really get clear about those values, how are we consistently applying them? So, we're going to spend just about 15 minutes together today talking about this gap between our values and the actions that we sometimes take. Now, when we think about that challenge, we think about how do we get clear about values? And you're going to learn more about that with Elma tomorrow. But then, do you have a system for applying those values as a bit of a gauge or um, as a way that you can use them to engage with the decisions that you need to make day to day? And why it matters is that when we are misaligned with the decisions that we make and that the values that we carry, what does that do? That creates an internal conflict. It can create burnout and it can create business struggles for us. So, what we want to do is let's think about that last difficult decision that was in front of you. Did you consciously filter that decision through your values? So let's talk about a framework that you might be able to apply beginning immediately that helps you use your values as a filter for those decisions that you make. And in this Tuesday Tips, we're going to be talking about the decision that you make for those business choices that you have in front of yourself. So, 3 steps. The first step that I want to challenge you to think about is creating 3 questions that you can use to filter your values. So let's take 3 values, your top 3 values, and create a question for each one of those that you use consistently as your measuring stick in making decisions. Let's use an example for you. If your values are freedom, excellence, and connection, your 3 questions might be something like, does this opportunity enhance or limit my freedom? That actually became one of the questions that I used in this decision in whether to take on the new client or not, this new opportunity. So remember, the values that we're talking about here are freedom, excellence, connection. So your first question, does this opportunity enhance or limit my freedom? The second question might be something like, can I deliver excellence in this situation? And the third question might be something like, will this deepen meaningful connections? So you take those three top values, you create three questions that allow you to filter that decision through those values. Make sense? So I'm going to give you a universal values question sort of check so that you can fit whatever your values into each one of these. So first question, take whatever your value is and say, does this, whatever's in front of me, honor my value of whatever that value is? So if that value is freedom, if that value is accountability, if that value is excellence, whatever, just put that in there. The second question, how can I more fully express whatever that value is in this situation? Does it honor my value of blank? Number two, how can I more fully express whatever that value is in this situation? And then finally, what would someone who deeply embodies whatever that value is do here or do in this situation? What would somebody who deeply embodies the value of blank do here? Another measuring stick I want to give you when we filter a decision through our values is, when I look back in this decision in 5 years, will I be proud of how I honored whatever that value is? So using that future self test can be really key in filtering for our values. So connection is a huge value of mine. When I look back on this decision in 5 years, will I be proud of how I honored my value of connection? So what I want to challenge you to do is spend some time identifying those values, which the show tomorrow with Alma will help with, and then creating questions that are specific to your values to use as a filter when you make that decision. Now, here's your tip. Go no more than 2 or 3 questions per value, if you even go beyond one question per value, because what we have a tendency to do is go into analysis paralysis. Let me think about it from this angle and that angle. So 1, 2 questions per value, because the goal here is to get clarity, not to get to perfection. There's really nothing, we've got to move into action at some point and test our hypothesis, test our theory. So once we've run those questions, what do we do with those questions? Well, we use the traffic light system. So we do our questions as a filter, and then we say green. Green light means all of our values aligned, so we can move forward with confidence. A yellow light might mean that there were mixed signals. So we need to get more information. We need to explore further. We need to set boundaries and determine what's most important to us in this situation. A red light would mean that there's a real values conflict and that it's not a fit for you in the current structure. Maybe you need to restructure it. Maybe you need to decline it. So, what are some of the things that we have decisions to make about as business owners that would align with this values filter and then the traffic signal system to decide? Well, things like client selection, pricing decisions, whether you want to partner with somebody, work at a situation with somebody, all those things need to align with our values. Okay, so we start, step one was the questions that we create to filter our values through. Step two was the traffic signal determination, green light, yellow light, red light. Step three is that we want to continue to check in with our values over time. So, how are we weekly reviewing the decisions that we're making in our business through that value lens? How are we doing maybe mid session pulse check ins for ourselves? Like, are we showing up the way that we want to in our sessions, in the way that we're engaging with our clients? So it's not a one and done kind of thing. We want to continue to check in to our values and create practices that allow us in whatever way that that makes sense for you and your business. Just remember that we want to do those check-ins. Now, I also want to take a second to explore with you as we think about applying our values, using them as a filter for our decisions. Let's look at some possible pitfalls or barriers that we might hit with that, and then determine what can we do instead. So pitfall number one, very common. I continue to be guilty of this at times, certainly work with clients who struggle with this at the beginning of their practices. It's that scarcity versus values. I need money. I need to create, a flow. I need to put food on my table or pay rent or pay for my whatever. So in that pitfall of scarcity versus does it align with my values? Now, what I can say is both as a therapist and as a coach, as I built my practice, as I built my reputation, I was able to with more confidence be able to say, I'm not the coach for you, or I'm not the therapist for you, or let me refer you to somebody who is more in alignment with what you're looking for. When it comes to excellence, I know that I'm not the best coach for certain things. So, what I have learned over the course of over 35 years of working with people is that any time that I've gone against my gut about what is the best fit, and I have gone on a scarcity mentality instead of an abundance mentality and taken on a client that maybe wasn't the best client for me, I've regretted it. I have regretted it because maybe didn't feel like I was able to bring them the results that I wanted to. Maybe it just was a stomachache client, just like this doesn't have the kind of energy, the relationship doesn't have the kind of energy that I want. So, what I would encourage you to do is avoid this pitfall as much as possible. I get that we all want to make money. And I also get, in all transparency, that at the very beginning of our coaching, we might want to coach lots of different kinds of people to determine who do we have that kind of energy with. When you get to a place of really knowing who the best clients are for you and you let go of that belief because something might be attractive financially, I I would just encourage you to really think about, does it align with my values? So, pitfall number one, scarcity versus values. Pitfall number two is when we get overcomplicated with the process, when we maybe feel like we have to spreadsheet it out and look at every scoring system and look at, I mean, the whole thing about this using your values as a filter or as a part of your decision making process is if you need a calculator to determine if something feels right, you're missing the point of this. So let's not overcomplicate this. That's the first pitfall. Another pitfall is this whole like, who's in my values committee? Like, who do I need to double check with? I get that we all have some people that we want, and I support that. I think we all need a touchstone, somebody, or maybe a process that we use to lean into to create that clarity. But if you have so many stakeholders that you need to check in with around your values, then my guess is they're not your values. You're aligning with a, so yes, you might have a couple people, you might have a support system that you lean into. But if you need to consult your mastermind group and then your mentor and then your spouse and then your business coach, it's like, you're, I don't think then you're using your values as the screen. So just think about that. And then remember, once again, this is not about perfection. This is not about um, every situation is going to absolutely perfectly match what you're looking for or all your values simultaneously. Sometimes a good 2 out of 3 is good, or knowing that you can, shift or work with a situation is good enough to decide to move forward. So the simple truth is that our values are a part of the screen, but if your truth values process of screening takes longer than the decision itself, it like takes longer to jump through all the hoops, then you're overcomplicating it. And trust your framework, trust your gut, and then take action. And then the final pitfall is pitfall number 3, and that is if we're too rigid, if we're just too confined by the whole, and it's just like it sort of goes back to the perfectionism. If in fact it has to be so perfect, then you're using your values as chains rather than as a compass. And what my point here is, let's get clarity about what our values are and then use them as a compass. Use them to help us make the best decisions for ourselves. So as we close out of this Tuesday's tips, I want to challenge you to think about, as you move forward into this week, one business decision that you're facing. And then use this process, this framework that I talked about today, to filter that decision through your values. I promise you that living your values isn't just about integrity, it's about being and building sustainable success and feeling fulfilled through your business. And isn't that really what we want to do? We want to feel fulfilled, make meaningful choices in our lives that are in alignment. It would be helpful if I could talk, that are in alignment with our values. So I want to remind you that tomorrow's show that goes live with Alma Weaver-Jones, dives into our values clarity. And that is the foundation of everything we've talked about today. The other thing I want to challenge and invite you to do is join or follow the Star Coach Facebook page. And I'm going to put a community discussion prompt up there tomorrow about Alma's show. So I'm going to, each week, I'm going to put a new prompt into Star Coach Facebook page and just ask you a question about how the show impacted you. And I'd love your feedback. I'd love to know how the incredible guests that come on the Star Coach show impact you. Now, if you're a new listener to the Star Coach show or unaware of the Star Coach show, you can find are you ready for this? Tomorrow's show is number 450. You can find all 450 shows at starcoachshow.com. That's starcoachshow.com. As I wrap up today, whenever it is that you're listening to this Tuesday Tips, I invite you to drop it on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. Drop a comment below. What's your biggest challenge in using your values as a filter for your decision? What's your biggest challenge? And if you leave a comment, we'll be able to respond and support you and maybe even give you some guidance. So Until next week, where we will dive into another Tuesday Tips. This is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. Hop on over to Facebook Star Coach Show page, follow us, and never miss a moment. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to this channel. You will get all sorts of tips. You guys have a great day. Bye bye.